Shabbat Shalom. Good morning to everybody here in Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, to whoever may be watching across the world. We bless you. We bless you, your home and your family, your bloodlines, and your nations. May the Holy One really release His holiness and His energy and His healing into your homes and your families and your bloodlines today. Look who I have with me today. I know you've been missing him because I've been missing him. This is Chauncey Anthony Tony Young, and he is with us today from Newport, Arkansas. He's joining us again after so many months of being apart. I'd ask him if he could possibly make it down at some stage during our preparation for the seasons, and this was the week we could do it. So hallelujah, it's a good thing. I hope you're all celebrating. If you're online and watching online, I encourage you to drop Tony a note, let him know you've missed him and what you would like to say to him. Tony, I want to ask you just basically to kind of greet everyone. Tell us what's going on with you and what you're feeling in the spirit of the living God.
Amen. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I First, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be back, and of course, among family, lots of good things happening and transitional things happening, challenges and things like that. But it's just good to be here. It's always good to be present and to be here with you and to be able to share this moment with you. I really felt like I've been saying this now for a while, probably at the start of Elul or right there at Teshuvah, the beginning of Teshuvah. I've been saying I have really felt like this, like the love of God has just been on my life, the mercy of God, of course, but I've really felt a tangible sense of his love, a very practical love. I felt that I've been saying that love is in the air, and it seemed to not be the message that goes with the tide right now.
No, it's true.
But really, really, love is in the air, and I felt it, and my wife and I have felt it. We've gone through our own challenges, and we have really, really felt the goodness of God, and it's brought hope. It's brought this energy to us, this God energy to us to be able to do the things that I feel we'll need to do in these days or whatever. But that's what's been happening with me as I just really have been under this hoopah of his presence and just being experiencing his love in ways that I never thought I'd be experiencing it, especially in times like this. We knew his love would be here. We knew he would be speaking to us. But man, when everybody is saying something different and you're sitting there bathing in his love, like, I hear you guys, but I'm so captivated right now by his love that I can't come out of this place to start along the tides of the stuff that's happening.
What Tony just described to you is what I call the ecosystem of the kingdom. Before we deal with or opposing kingdoms, before we deal with opposing dominions and darkness, he enshrouds us, envelops us with the atmosphere of his kingdom, which is that download of a sense of shalom, a sense of well-being, a sense of hope, a sense of joy. And how it emanates into us is the sense of love, the overpowering, overwhelming, captivating love of God for us, for mankind, for his creation that transcends all these things, because he knows that we need to be enveloped in this atmosphere before we take on or before we engage or take encounter from the darkness of the world, the nations, the challenges of the different cultures and the different ideologies and political positions that we're going to be faced with. So he envelops us with this atmosphere of love. I call it the kingdom ecosystem. And what Tony's describing is this is a kind of a necessary prerequisite for us to engage the seasons and the times in which we live. So, Tony, if you want to share anything more about that right now, go ahead. Okay. Well, the the parsha this week, the section of the Torah that we read is Deuteronomy 32. It's called Ha'azinu. We'll talk about what that means in just a moment. It's the Hebrew word that starts the whole process, the first Hebrew word in Deuteronomy 32, Ha'azinu. And it is the whole first 48 verses of this 52-verse chapter of the Torah are the Song of Moshe. This is the Song of Moses, and this is for those of you who are from who follow Yeshua, the Messiah. In Revelation 15, this is referenced. This song that Moshe is going to sing is referenced. And in that version, it's 15, and he says that, and they sang the song of Moshe and the song of the Lamb, saying, "Great and marvelous are your works, O Holy One God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, O Lord, for you are the King of the Kedoshim, of the saints, of the holy ones. Who will not fear you, O Lord? Who will not glorify your name, O Lord? For your judgments are made clear, manifest, visions." And this Song of Moshe and the Song of the Lamb will be two songs that are sung like a canticle. From the earth, from the realm of the people of the earth, we will sing the Song of Moshe. And in the heavenlies, the Shemaim, the voices of the Shemaim of the heavens, the four living creatures and the elders. I got a little extra volume there. The four living creatures and the 24 elders, and the cherubim and the seraphim, and the saints of the ages will be singing the song of the Lamb over and canticling with and harmonizing with the song of Moshe. Heaven and earth united again in the songs. Now that's the message that we're trying to get you to understand. We're going toward a union of heaven and earth, a reunification of Hashemayim b'ha'aretz, which is what started the whole process. We're going back to the beginning, and he said, in the beginning it says, Bereshit bara, the Holy One created the Hashemayim, the heavens and the earth. And from that point forward, he began to divide the heavens and the earth. And what was in Hashemayim versus Ba'aretz was on the earth. And so now we see this process, and he's going to restore this back to a perfect unification. And we're part of that process, and we are on watch. We are called to this particular season in time as the call to unification, call to reconnection of the heavens and the earth is taking place in the earth. It's a weighty call. It's a glorious call. It's a humbling call, and yet it's an exhilarating call. That he would feel that we were, and I'll use the word capable. I use that with tongue in cheek, and I'll tell you why in just a moment, but capable of withstanding. Why? How can we be capable of withstanding the struggles and the difficulty and the darkness of this time that we live in? We are enveloped. We are being enveloped in the ecosystem of the kingdom, in this outpouring of his own download of shalom, peace, and well-being, and joy, and love. Now that is our secret and our key. And Ha'azinu is the eternal song that helps from an earth standpoint of connecting. The song of Moses is that which connects with the song in the heavenlies. And we already know what the song of the heavenlies is. Worthy is the Lamb. The song of the Lamb. Worthy is the Lamb who is slain before the foundation of the world. Worthy, 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 who is able to take the scrolls, open the scrolls, release the whole wisdom of God upon the earth. All your judgments are made manifest. All these things. That's the song of the Lamb. And the song of Moshe is the story. So, Tony, what do you got? Anything you want to share about that at this particular stage, or anything else? All right, we're going to move on. All right. Well, Ha'azinu always comes, we always read this portion by virtue of this times and the seasons. So we always wind up reading this portion right before Sukkot, the festival of the tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles. Well, that's harvest time. That's the final, ultimate, concluding harvest time. I hope you're seeing this picture. He's trying to prepare us every year as we go through this cycle. He's trying to prepare us for the ultimate endgame. And the ultimate endgame is not chaos and destruction. The ultimate endgame is harvest. A beautiful, bountiful, joyful, celebratory harvest. And exactly the plan that the creator of the universe designed from the foundation. He didn't design us to devolve into chaos, into meaninglessness, into destruction. The world will tell you that. That's what it looks like to them. That's all they can see because they're not enveloped in the atmosphere, in the ecosystem atmosphere of the Holy One. So they see things going this way and going awry, and they're going that way, and it's horrible. Everybody's divided. And that's part of the message of the world right now is divide, 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 divide. Set boundary lines. Last year it was divine on race. You know, if you're not this ethnicity, you're that ethnicity, and you're that's bad. They're horrible, and this person's good. They're good. They're perfect. You know, all this ethnicity break down. And this year it's vax. If you're not vaxxed, if you are vaxxed, do we divide on this basis? And the Holy One says, you forgot something, didn't you? One new man. This is the ecosystem of the kingdom. We don't divide ourselves on the basis of things that the earth and the world and the cultures of this world and divide themselves over. The ecosystem, the atmosphere of the kingdom requires us to stay focused on the one new man, not who we were. Not who we were born in the natural, who we have been born in the spiritual realm to be. That transcends all these divisions and all these limitations. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. But the harvest is coming. And the harvest is when all mankind, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Holy One as the waters cover the sea. Now, what will it look like? What has he given us? What pattern has he given us in his Torah, in his testimonies of what it will look like at the end of days? I call this the song of Joseph's harvest, of Joseph's harvest. The story of Joseph is more than just a nice little story in the Bible. At the end of Genesis, in the beginning, you see the results in the beginning of Exodus. It's not just a little story of history. This is the story of the future. This is the story of prophecy. This is the story of what he's going to do. He says, you know Joseph? You understand what happened with Joseph and his brothers and how the division took place. You understand how the persecution took place, how the darkness seemed to envelop the earth and envelop Joseph. But he was clothed with what? The atmosphere. He was clothed with the ecosystem, surrounded and enveloped with the ecosystem of shalom and joy and hope and love. And so what happens at the end of the harvest, at the end of this process? What happens? Joseph and his brothers are reunited, and they all come together, and they function. And they still go through things, but what happens is at the end of the book of Genesis, he says, but you will carry my bones forward. You'll carry my memory. You'll carry my substance. This whole story will go forth into the next realm, into the next region, next time, next season. So I call it the Song of the Harvest. And let the sons of Joseph arise. Let the sons and daughters of Joseph arise. This is our story. Our story is not how we all got angry with each other and hated each other and turned against each other. Our story is how we overcame and how we worked into this process and came together. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about Yom Kippur going into Sukkot, because this is the season we're in. We just concluded, and I realize, and I don't mean to suggest that I'm better than anybody else or know more than anybody else. Look, I follow the ancient path, and so the ancient paths involve an ancient calendar. And so our Yom Kippur observation was Wednesday night through Thursday night. Okay. I know others are different days, and I don't have anything. I'm not here to make an argument. I'm just saying that was my Yom Kippur. That's the annual traditional calendar. And so what happens on Yom Kippur is, I will give you a little story. I'll try to illustrate what Yom Kippur is about to me by virtue of a little story. In 1988, I moved into a new house. My wife and I moved into a new house. And it needed some repair. Well, Tony and I are both probably in this category. But if you're looking for the handyman, You don't need to look in my direction. I mean, I can function on a very low level, but my tools are words. My best tools are words. And so, one of the things we had to do was replace the toilets. This is going to sound silly. Replace the toilets in the bathrooms, okay? I know you guys are going through a renovation right now in your bathrooms. And so, we bought the toilets. I bought the toilets and had them all laid out and ready to move in. But there was a very narrow door to that bathroom I was going to work on. And so, I had no other real help. And so, I had to pick up that toilet. And, it's heavy, but it's not like you're going to die. Unfortunately, I was not counting on the fact that I had to navigate through that very narrow door to get back to where the toilet was going to be. And so I reached down thinking, can I do this? And I think, yeah, I can do this. So I pick up this toilet bowl. I'm sorry for the ridiculousness of this story, but it will tell the story in a moment. And so I pick up this heavy porcelain toilet, and you're bending over, you're in an awkward position anyway when you're carrying that kind of a weight, and it's so awkward, so it's big, and so I'm carrying the thing, and I'm saying to myself, I got this, right? You say these little tasker tools, I got this, and I get to the door, and I'm thinking, I got this. And I turn into the door. I try to find myself a position that I can get into. And all of a sudden, at certain stages, I'm going through that door and realizing my weight distribution and its weight distribution are two different spheres. and I yell out, I ain't got this. Now, fortunately, I was able to lay down and hold the toilet in my arms and lay down and lay the toilet down with me in the floor, and it didn't crack the porcelain or do any damage to it, but it was one of those humiliating, embarrassing moments. I thought I had this. That's what Yom Kippur is. We think we got this. We think we got this, and then we appear before the king, and then we stand along with our brothers and sisters. What'd she say? King on the throne. Thank you very much. Oh, well, I can get this back. I can bring this back, okay? So we stand before the king, the creator of the universe, and we're there with our brothers. And what we find out is that and our enemies, all mankind passed before on Yom Kippur, all mankind, friend, enemy, people you like, people you don't like, people you had real fights with, people you had real troubles with, people who hurt you, people you hurt. Mistakes you made that remind you, and they're all there before the throne on the same day. And all of a sudden you realize, I don't want him here. Or I don't want to be here if she's there. I'm not over this yet. I ain't got this. I don't have this. And that's when, that moment of vulnerability, we realize we're vulnerable. We realize we cannot do this on our own. We cannot handle this by our theology or by our ideology or by our belief system or by anything. And that's when, if I had had somebody there as I was passing through that door to hand that furnishing off to, that was much stronger than I, then we'd never have that little spill on the ground. I would have realized I was mortal. I would have realized I was weak. I couldn't handle that kind of a process. But someone stronger than I would have been there to take the weight, to take the burden. Well, that's what Yom Kippur is about. There is someone stronger than you. There is someone stronger than us waiting for us on the other side of the door. And on the other side of the door, he says, I know you can't do this. I knew you couldn't do this before I called you. It wasn't part of the prerequisites that you could do this that I called you. What was part of the prerequisites was that when you came to the doorway and you realized you couldn't do this, you let me have this. You let me take this burden upon yourself. You let me take the burden of your sin. You let me take your burden of your offense, of other people's offenses against you, of your failures, of your mistakes. all those things and take that burden, and whenever at the end of Yom Kippur, at the end of this Day of Atonement, because that's what atonement means, he steps in and fills the gaps. He steps in and covers us when we are uncovered. And so when at the end of that day, when you realize he took my burden, he took my burden on, and he's carrying it. And he didn't leave me behind. He says, come with me, let's go together. Now that's Yom Kippur, and that's the season we are in. That's why we should be enveloped with this atmosphere of joy and hope and love. It is not about what's going on in the world. It's what's going on in the king's kingdom, in the king's chambers. And what he is wanting us to do now, he says, now come with me, and I'll show you how I'll take everybody else's burdens too. I will take anybody's burdens who will hand them to me. And I will enable them to come rise up, and you won't be enemies ever again. You will not be at some odds or enmity with any person on this earth. You don't have to be if you'll let me take that burden away from you. You won't be under burdens of fear, anxiety, and worry. You won't be under burdens of resentment and jealousy and envy. You won't be under burdens of sadness and depression and paranoia about what's going on around the world. Because you see, if we are that, if that's where we are, if we're sad, we're depressed, we're angry, we're obsessed, we're envious, we're jealous, we're resentful, if that's what is our message, the world will not receive anything from the kingdom. That's all our flesh. So the king would like to tell us about the song. He says, have you got a song in your heart? Have you got a song of the ages in your heart? And this song, the song of Moshe that we'll talk about today, is a song, it's the greatest love song ever written. Now, it's written in Hebrew, in ancient Hebrew. And so when you try to translate it into English, you get lost in the wording. You get lost in the translations, and I'll warn you that if you sit there and try to analyze this song like you do other kinds of scripture, other places of scripture, especially if you go to the New Testament and you try to dissect Paul, if you try to put a Pauline theology into this, or an approach to the Bible into this particular song, you need to read the whole thing. We need to do, and we're going to do that in just a moment. We're going to read the whole thing. And it's going to be in English. Unfortunately, I know most of you don't speak Hebrew. Most of you don't speak, and if you did, it would be ancient Hebrew. This is the Hebrew of heaven. And that's why the words don't always make sense to us in English, because we're connecting with heaven, right? This is our time to connect from earth to heaven, and that means our understanding sometimes has to just go away. Forget our understanding. We have to speak what is being spoken in the heavenly realms and trust that what is being spoken in the heavenly realms is a story. So before we get into, Tony, any remarks you would like to make about the song of Moses?
I don't know if it's necessarily about the songs yet. I want to follow you with that. But just going back to what you were talking about earlier about the atonement, and, it's really difficult for narcissistic flesh to embrace atonement. And so in that case, God leads us to atonement, right? And he does that. You're going to talk a little bit, hopefully, because I wrote notes on that, so I'm hopefully you're going to get there, where you break the this parsha into the two crucibles, right? And you'll talk about the two different groups of people within the crucibles. When I went to look up crucible, right, I had an idea of what you meant because we talk about this every year. But I wanted to get a little bit more clarity. I wanted to go there this year. And so I looked up crucible, right? And one of the definition was situations of severe trial or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new. We are in the process.
Could you read that again?
Okay. Situations of severe trial, or in which different elements interact, leading to the creation of something new. the atonement, Yom Kippur, after we go through Yom Kippur, we end up at something new. But to have gotten there, we've been on a journey, right? We've had to go through some severe trials, and some of us are still going through some severe trial. But the hope, the glory of it, is that something new comes out. Even when you talked about the one new man, that's going to be after we go through these crucibles, right? It's going to happen, but it's going to happen after. So one of the things that I wanted to say to this is that for me to truly embrace Yom Kippur this year, my wife and I had to go through our own process of learning obedience through the thing we suffered. And it was through going through that process together that I really embraced Yom Kippur this year, right? And so I just kind of wanted to start there.
Through the suffering, we learn obedience. I've heard that somewhere before, I do believe. Now, I want to kind of introduce a couple things before we get directly into the song. I will tell you that sometimes I go on and I listen to some beloved mentors of mine that I listen to, and one thing that I have not been able to hear is anybody really teaching the Song of Moshe. From the ancient of the rabbis to whatever, this is a problem to really be able to exegete the Song of Moses. It's like, how can you grab a hold of something so huge that is above your language level and above your understanding level and try to bring it down and make some sense of it? So what you'll find is, and I will be no exception, Tony will be no exception today, we will not explain to you the Song of Moshe and its individual lines. There is no human being who can do so. There is one who we can hand the toilet bowl to, as the case may be, who will carry that burden for us, and it will be very evident to us all whenever our minds are awakened again to the Edenic state, and we are one new man again in Adam, in the new Adam, in that process. But that's not today. And so I will talk about the Song of Moshe. I will dance around the Song of Moshe. What do you do with a song? You dance to it. Well, I'm going to dance with the Song of Moshe. That's all I know how to do. And if you tuned in to get a line-by-line exegesis of this song, I've tried to find one. I can't find it anywhere. And that's counting a lot of stuff. And I can't find a good exegesis. For people who try to make up, throw things at the wall, so that's probably what it means. But that's about it. So I'm going to kind of put it in context. We have the Song of Moshe. And then we will have a series of other songs that we should compare to the Song of Moses. The first song that we should compare to the Song of Moses is probably the Song of Creation, the 7 days of creation. The 7 days of creation, as it's presented. The song is rhythmic meter and repetition of phrases, right? The choruses. So if you look at Genesis chapter 1, what you're going to find is this is not a text. This is a song. The creator of the universe is singing over his creation. And in that song, he is touching something beyond your mind. The thing about songs is that while words and conversations deal with your intellect, your pseudo-intellect, your mind, all your different, the song goes directly into your spirit. It goes beyond thinking and rationality and goes to your spirit. And therefore, it's very dangerous what songs you listen to. It really is. I mean, people think it doesn't really matter. It really does matter what songs you listen to, because they are not just talking to your mind. They're talking to your spirit. They can be for the Holy Spirit, or they can be for the spirits of darkness, and they will weigh you down. And so we have this battle going on. What song? Ha'azinu, we said that's the title of this parsha, and it means ears. Our ears, your ears. What are you giving your ears to? What is your, it's like the old satellite dish we used to have, the big old satellite dish you used to have whenever that first started, and you had to tune it back there, had to twist, had to crank it up, turn it to get to where you could get the station you wanted to get. What are you cranked to? What are you tuned to? That's the first key. Ha'azinu, and he's going to go through the process. So, with the song of creation. And so, remember that the song of creation wasn't just, okay, I think we'll just play around today. I think we'll just experiment today. Get in the laboratory, get the fire going and get the vials and the whatever working, and we'll see what we come up with. Wow, let's see what we might come up. And that's not what this was. The song of creation was a song with a goal, with a purpose, with an objective. And what was going to happen at the end of the song of creation? What happens? And God created man in his own shade or shadows, or English Bibles a lot of times say image. But it is to move as shade, as the shadow. He created man upon the earth to move as his shadow upon the earthly realm, in the earthly realm. And he said to be fruitful and not just to have babies. That means to be fruitful, to bear fruit. What is the fruit? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, meekness, temperance, goodness, faithfulness, and self-denial. A lot of people will say self-control. It's really not self-control. If you control it, you got a problem. It's still yours. He said, no, it's not self-control, it's self-denial. It's learning how to put yourself behind in the second realm, and now follow only the way of the king. Well, so this is the message. The message is, I want to make man on the earth to be my representative, to be my shadow, do what I do in the pattern, the timing, and the sequences, and to the extent with the level that I do it, because that's what a shadow does, follows the object around. And that's what the goal of mankind is. That's what our purpose on this earth is to become like that. It's a process. I put on my Facebook page on Yom Kippur, I put on a song, Lama Ancha. If anybody saw it, I don't know if you saw it or not. It's a song by Shlomo Katz, which means peace to the end. Anyway, that's his name, Shlomo Katz. And his... And it's taken from the Siddur, the prayer book for Yom Kippur, for the evening service, for the latter service of Yom Kippur. And one of the things it says is, Lama, for your sake alone, for your sake, O God. And then it goes on, intervene, act, step, like Yeshua on the other side of the door, grabbing a hold of the weight and the burden and taking it for me. Act, intervene. Because we are poor and impoverished and broken down here. We need help down here. And it says, the Spirit, neshama, that which you breathed into Adam, that special thing that is you, it's yours. But the flesh, but the body, well, the way I translate it, it's a work in progress. Our body, our physical realm, our physical aspect of things, our mind, our emotions, our will, our sense of what's important in life, our priority system, all the things that are of this body and of this flesh, well, it's a work in progress. Your neshama, the neshama you breathe into me, that eternal being that resides within this physical shell that I live in, that neshama is yours alone. And it is glorious and perfect and in all its ways. But it is housed in this body. Paul talked about it a lot. This tabernacle that I have to live in this tabernacle. I have to live here until I'm freed, so to speak, because this tabernacle's got limitations. I ain't got this. It's got a lot of I ain't got this. This tabernacle is broken. That's why we can rejoice when a dear friend of the kingdom receives his release. When a dear friend of the kingdom receives his release from the limitations of this body, we can celebrate and rejoice. And so it will be for us. So will it be for us. And this is not a day we hold on to sadness and depression. Yes, we have fleshly things that miss the person, and we long to be able to see their face one more time. But more than that, we want to connect with their spirit eternally and be with them in that spirit. So the song of creation is, do you understand you have a purpose, an objective? You understand you are part of a grand plan? You're not just here willy-nilly to do what you want to do. We're part of a grand plan to bring about upon the earth in real time the aspect of the glory of heaven. All the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Holy One as the waters cover the sea. Well, another song, a series of songs that I want to talk about that correspond with the Song of Moshe. Told you we're dancing around it. We're going to read it, but we're going to dance around it first. So, the kingdom, we like to talk about the kingdom. Yeshua's favorite message, his favorite subject was the kingdom of heaven. You couldn't pull him off of that subject. You couldn't change his mind. You couldn't tell him it was a gospel of forgiveness of sin. It's a gospel of the kingdom. And if you get stuck in forgiveness of sin, it's a good place to be, but not for long. You got to move on beyond forgiveness of sin. This is about a whole lot more than forgiveness of sin. This is about the kingdom of heaven. This is about the plan of the song of the creation. This is about this coming to force and you being part of that process. So we get the song of Moshe, we get the song of creation, the Holy One, and then we get this. What is the kingdom? The kingdom is pictured by David, Melech David, and then Melech Shlomo, Solomon. And so what we have is when you get to the fullness of the unified kingdom and its greatest extent, the natural kingdom of Israel upon the earth, what do you see? You see Shlomo, Solomon. And Solomon and all of his glory, and the nations come to Solomon, right? The peoples come to Solomon, the nations come to Solomon, the ethnicities come to Solomon, everybody comes to Solomon. They come to him for wisdom. They come and they bring this is the end game. This is the ultimate end game, the picture of it at least. And Solomon starts out in his atmosphere. His first song is the ecosystem of the kingdom. He is enveloped with love. So the first song is the Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs. And what he is just enamored. He's not right. People will look at him and say, the stuff you're talking about there just it isn't rational. It isn't logical. Spock would not approve. He says, I know. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it glorious? I'm in love. I'm in love with it. And the grand scheme and the grand plan is like a great drama unfolding before my eyes. And I'm a player in this beautiful drama of life. And I get to participate with other people in this process. And so the Song of Solomon just woos you and stirs you and fills you with energy and a little bit of nervousness. Is it supposed to be like that? Because I ain't there. I ain't got that. If you can read that and say, yeah, you got lower level passion and lower level love, Solomon, then I want to talk to you. I really want to talk to you because Solomon's passion and all that happens to him, the king and the Shulamite, in the Song of Songs is a picture of what our relationship, our ecosystem of love with God is. Well, I will go on from that. That's his first song. That's the first song. And we carry that song. And then he gets into his middle years and his kingdom years. And during his kingdom years, he sings this song that sounds like, we call it Proverbs. We think Mishlei in Hebrew. It's like, okay, I'm going to address from the standpoint of having the atmosphere of heaven. I'm going to address earthly situations and apply the wisdom and the goodness and the love of heaven to earthly situations. But you got to understand this. You need to connect with wisdom. You need to connect with the wisdom. The wisdom. Don't ever forsake wisdom. My son, hear my words. Listen. Hold fast to wisdom. And over again, he keeps saying this. He tells you what wisdom looks like in given situations. And that's the middle part of the song. He's got this great symphony. Solomon has a symphony. Or opera may be the better term. So the first line is to get you must have the environment, the atmosphere of Song of Solomon, and then you must have the atmosphere of Proverbs and take on these various different aspects of earthly wisdom with dealing with real problems. He says, but how this is going to end. My final song, my concluding song is the one that you will not understand. Most people will not like this song. They might love the beauty and the pageantry and the sweetness of Song of Solomon. Intellect might be teased and enjoy reading of the Proverbs. But when we get to the song of Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, when we get to the song of the preacher, and the song of all is vanity, vanity of vanities, all is just meaningless nonsense. The stuff that we think is so important, The stuff that we think is so critical, it's all just a passing flurry of nothing. And when it's all over, we spent our livelihood, our energy, and our passion over a wisp of wind. And he concludes it, well, Tony, you tell him how he concludes it, okay?
Yeah, so way to bring me in and just tell how he concludes it. But yeah, Solomon's lived now, and yeah, songs are great, but he's lived and he's experienced a lot. He's gone after a lot. He's spent a lot. He's had a lot of time to think through things and to see whether or not those things were actually rewarding. And he's just like vapor, right? Everything I've done, everything I've gotten a hold of, all the knowledge, all the policies, all the decrees, it's, the pursuit was one thing, but when I got those things, it was like vapor. I mean, as fast as I got them, the joy or the experience of that was gone. And he says, and there's one part of that, he says, I actually hate life. Yep. I mean, read the code. He says, when he got, yeah, he says, what? He says, I feel like this was all a setup, right? I almost hate life. But he gets to the end, and he says, look, this is what I found out. There's only really one important thing, or two if you want to put it, but there's one focus. He says, and that's to fear God and keep his commandments. That's the whole of man. That's who we are. That's why we're here. He says, I realized after I've done all those things, after I've spent all that money, one of the things that upset Solomon, it seems like in that, he says, you do all this work, right? And you gather all these things, and then you die and leave them to somebody that you don't even know if they have the knowledge or the wisdom to even sustain. He says, I hate that, right? And so he goes on to these fits, but he does come to some pretty important conclusions, and that is, the most important thing is, and he did go back and say, it's really okay to enjoy the fruit of your labor. But really, in essence, he was saying, as long as you do that with an eye to the judgment. Right? Whatever you're doing now, you need to do it with an eye to the judgment, to the bema. Because at some point, when all this is done and you've spent everything you've spent and you've gotten all that you've gotten, you're going to have to stand before the judgment seat and give an account for everything you've done. So life under the sun, he said, it seemed like it was a horrible thing, but he learned to live life under the sun by living life under heaven, right? And that influenced his life under the sun.
Yeah, the realms of, you don't really see it much in English. You hear the words under the sun, and there's nothing new under the sun. Takat Hashemesh in Hebrew. There's this realm of under the sun, what you can see with your eyes because the sun enlightens it. This is what we see every day. This is the normal things of life that we look at. Hashemesh, Takat Hashemesh. Is that what you can see through the light? That's of the earth. That is cast upon the earth. This is what you see on the news. This is what you see in your family life. This is what you see developing as it happens. You see trends developing. You see sequences of events. You try to project based on that. This is Takat Hashemesh. He says that world is a trap of death. It has the stench of death all over it. It has no satisfaction in it. You just go from one thing to another, one opinion to another, one viewpoint to another, one argument to another, one controversy to another, one silly aspiration to another, and at the end of it, you aren't any further along than you were when you started. But you may as well try and catch the wind. That's sort of his song there. Thank you, Arlo Guthrie. Right. Or was it Donovan? Whoever sang that song. Now, but this is what life under the sun is like. And young people say, I don't like this song. I don't want you to tell me that everything I think is valuable, everything I want in life, in this flesh, in this tabernacle, in this temporary home, everything I want in this home is going to be meaningless to me. It'll never be satisfaction. I don't want you to tell me that. Solomon says, you want me to lie to you then? You want to think that your next paycheck or the big money in the bank is going to, the next vacation you're planning is going to somehow bring you to this realm, the next girlfriend or boyfriend you have, or the next wife or spouse you might be able to have is going to somehow make things altogether good. I want to tell you, that's not the way this works. That's not even what life's about. That's not the reason life was given. We're talking about the Song of Solomon here, the Songs of Solomon, because they correspond to the Song of Moshe. Everything's pointing us back. And before he says, fear Elohim and keep his commandments, he says, at the beginning of chapter 12, he says, English, remember your Creator. You may not understand this. That is not a common way of talking about him in Torah or in the Bible, anywhere. This Borecha, the one who molded you together, the one who built you out of earth, out of dirt, Adma. That's the one. I want you not to think of him in theological terms. I don't want you to think of him in sort of some. I'm not going to talk to you about the names that you're familiar with. I want you to get out of all the paradigms of religion you could possibly have, and I want to talk real talk here. Real talk is beyond all that theological ivory tower stuff. Here's the deal. He is your Creator. Number one. At the essence of all things, beyond all the theology, he is this. He put you together, knit you together, put you on earth at such a time as this. Remember your Creator, your Borecha. And it says in English, in the days of your youth. And that translation, that last word, youth, is a very interesting translation because the word doesn't mean youth. What it means, it's bakar. Bakar in Hebrew, bet, chet, and resh. Bakar. What is bakar? It's not youth, not directly. What bakar is a testing, a trial, a crucible. Remember the Creator, remember Borecha in the day of your crucible, in the day of your trials, in the day of your tribulations, your testing. Remember your Creator, not just because you're a young person, a young buck or whatever. You remember your Creator because you're going through stuff and you need to connect with Him in that moment, in that time, in that way. He's the guy on the other side of the bathroom door, for the analogy that we used earlier in the discussion. He's the one who will take the weight. Remember, commemorate, think of, keep it in the center of your mind, because zakor in Hebrew is this verb. And zakor doesn't just mean, passing remembrance. I remember him. No, this is, you're constantly focusing on keeping that at the center of your mind. It's a meditation process. Meditate. Keep your mind actively engaged with the Creator of the universe. Not just the Creator of the universe, your Creator. He's my Creator. It's a personal pronoun. Borecha. Now, that's a beautiful thing. And because you see, in the midst of your trials, in the midst of your tribulations, this is where you become who you were created to be. This is the process. This is the pattern. This is how you become mature. He says, remember your Creator in the days of your crucibles before the difficult days come. Your crucible is not the end game. The difficult days that follow the crucible are the end game. Because in the difficult days, and we are in the difficult days, we have come to at least the beginning part of the difficult days. I mean, I hate to see how much more difficult they can be, but I know they can be. But we have come to the crucibles, to the point of now what we learned in the crucibles about staying focused upon our Creator. And why we focus on our Creator? Because He said, you are my shadow. You are to be my shadow. You are to be fruitful and multiply. And you are to fill and replenish the earth, make the earth full. The whole earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory. This is how we do this process. He says, now that if you understand who you are, because who I am, now we can begin to move forward into the difficult days. We were born to live in the difficult days. We've been chosen to live in these difficult days. Not because we have better ideas. Not because we have better rhetoric. Not because we have better ideology. better politics, better politics. Not because we have a better movement or we have better weapons, a better army. We are called to step into the difficult days because we, of all people, can be enveloped in the atmosphere, in the ecosystem of the kingdom of heaven, and bring that, and then bring the wisdom of heaven down to earth in real time, and like the book of Proverbs, and then begin to understand and tell people where the beauty really lies, where the reality of life really lies. And it's not in having more money. It's not in having more goods. It's not in having more love, affection, tenderness, and not having a wish list or a bucket list of things you want to get done. And they're all just empty. They're not only, none of you will make you fulfilled. But his kingdom, you were born to be one new man. All right, so that is where this song of Solomon and his songs compare. We haven't even gotten to the first line of the Song of Moshe. It's time, right? All right, so if you would, stand with me. We're going to recite in English as best we can, realizing this is an approximation. Before we touch the words, these living Devarim, these living energy sources of heaven that have been given to us, we speak in this house, in this fellowship, we speak this blessing out of Psalm 119. And it goes like this. If you know it, you can repeat it after me. If you don't know it, just listen and enjoy it. All these words come out of Psalm 119. Open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from us. Our souls cry out for your judgments at all times. How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your Torah. For your Torah is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Amen. And beginning with chapter 32 of Deuteronomy, verse 1. In Hebrew, the word would be ha'azinu, but in English it says, give ear, O heavens, Shemaim, and I will speak. And hear, Shema in Hebrew, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, as raindrops on the tender herb, and as showers on the grass. For I proclaim the name of the Creator, the Holy One. I ascribe greatness to our God. He is the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of truth and without any injustice. Righteous and upright is he. But they have corrupted themselves. They are not his children. Because of their blemish, they are a perverse and a crooked generation. Is this how you deal with the Holy One? O foolish and unwise people. Is he not your father who bought you? Has he not made you and established you and set you in place? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of the many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you. Your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the peoples. He did it according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Holy One's portion is his people. Yaakov, Jacob, is the place of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land and in the wasteland, a howling wilderness. And he encircled him, he enveloped him. He instructed him. Song of Solomon, book of Proverbs. He encircled him, he enveloped him, he instructed him, and he kept him as it says in English, apple, the spark, the fire in his eye. And as an eagle stirs up his nest and hovers over its young, spreading out his wings and taking them up, carrying them on his wings, so the Holy One led him. And there was no foreign god with him. And then he made him ride in the heights of the earth, and that he might eat the produce of the fields. And he made him draw honey from the rock, and oil from the flinty rock, curds from the cattle, and the milk of the flock, with fat of lambs, and the rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the choicest wheat. And you drank wine, the blood of its grapes. But Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat. You grew thick. You are obese. And then he forsook the God who made him, and he scornfully esteemed the rock of his salvation, of his Yeshua. And they provoked him to jealousy with foreign gods. With abominations they provoked him to anger. And they sacrificed to demons, not to God. To gods that they didn't even know. To new gods, new arrivals that your fathers didn't revere. Of the rock who begot you, you were unmindful. You have forgotten, remember, you've forgotten the God who fathered you. And when the Holy One saw it, he spurned you because of the provocation of his sons and his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them, and I will see what their end will be. For they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faith, no emunah. Remember that phrase. Banim lo emunah. Children in whom there's no faith. They have provoked me to jealousy by what is not God. They have moved me to anger by their foolish idols. I will provoke them to jealousy by those who are not a nation, a people. And I will move them to anger by a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and it will burn to the lowest Hades, the lowest Sheol. And it will consume the earth with her increase, and will set on fire the foundations of the mountains. Sounds to me like the difficult days. I will heap disasters on them, and I will spin my arrows on them, and they will be wasted with hunger and devoured by pestilence and bitter destruction. And I will also send against them the teeth of beasts with the poison of serpents of the dust. The sword will destroy outside, for there will be terror within. And the young man and the virgin and the nursing child with the man of gray hairs. And I would have said, I will dash them in pieces. I will make the memory of them cease from among men, had I not feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should misunderstand. Hold on. You got 32?
27. Had I not feared provocation by the enemy, lest their adversaries should misunderstand, lest they should say, our hand is triumphant, it was not the Lord who did all this. For they are a nation void of counsel, and there is no understanding in them. If they were wise, they would understand this. They would discern their latter end. How could one have chased 1,000 and two have put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and the Lord had given them up?
For their rock is not like our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges of this. For their vine is the vine of Sodom and of the fields of Gomorrah, and their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of serpents and the cruel venom of cobras. Is this not laid up in store with me, sealed up among my treasures? Vengeance is mine, and recompense, and their foot will slip in due time. For in the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things to come hasten upon them. For the Holy One will judge his people and will have compassion on his servants when he sees that their power is gone. I ain't got this. and there is no one remaining bond or free. And he will say, where are their gods? The rock in which they trusted. They sought refuge. Who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offering? Let them rise and help you and be your refuge. Now see that I, even I, am he. There is no God besides me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. There is none who can deliver from my hand. For I raise my hand to heaven and I say, as I live forever. If I whet my glittering sword and my hand takes hold of judgment, I will render vengeance to my enemies and repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and with my sword will I devour flesh, and the blood of the slain and of the captives from the heads of the leaders of the enemy. And then verse 43, which is the end of the song. Rejoice, O Gentiles. Rejoice, O nations. Rejoice, O ethnicities. Rejoice, O ideologies. Rejoice, O political theories. Rejoice, all people. Rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people. One new man. For he will avenge the blood of his servants and will render vengeance to his adversaries. He will provide atonement for his land and his people. May the reading of the word be blessed. You may be seated. What just happened? Whoa. What on earth did Moses just do? We can stay up with him when he says, and the Lord spoke to me and said this, and you should do that. But now he's sung this song, and the words are over our heads. They are. They're over all of our heads. It's a comfortable place to be, knowing that the creator of the universe can speak over your head. And it's a good place to be, to realize that he has something higher than you could ever even imagine or dream or envision. I think Paul had something to do with that. So say about that. Now, this beautiful vision, he says, okay, now some of it looks scary in the middle part. That's the difficult days. In the difficult days, things are going to look really, really, really bad. But I have placed something within my people. I have placed my own neshama. I have placed my own spirit, and I have placed my words of Torah, and I've placed my wisdom into their spirit. And so when the difficult days turn to their worst, get to the lowest, worst level, that's not how it ends. That is not the way this story ends. Here's how the story ends. My people arise, and I join them, and I lead them, and I take them forth, and lead them forth. And we come forth, and the one thing that nobody counted on happening, the principalities and the powers never have counted on this. They never counted on this, that the whole thing ends with this. A great celebratory harvest of rejoicing when all the Gentiles and all the nations join together with the people of the covenant and they sing the praises and the glory of God. That's the way this story ends. This is the ultimate endgame. So did you get lost along the way? Did you get lost in one of the verses or two of the verses or some of the story or the issues about wrath and how do we deal with the wrath of the creator of the universe? And how do we deal with these issues? Did you get lost in there? Don't get lost. Keep reading to the end. Keep reading to the end and catch this last one little verse. He says, it's going to go by so fast, it's going to be like a speedster or a jet boat. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But here's the story. The story can be wrapped up in this final verse, verse 43. Rejoice, O Gentiles, O nations. Rejoice, O peoples of all the earth with him. And you see all the patterns of how he's developed it here. But it's all sort of, what is he trying to do to us here? What is the whole plan of the Song of Solomon, of Song of Moshe? Well, and why will it be sung? Because can you imagine how we go into rejoice, O peoples, O nations, with his people, and the heavenly chorus refrains, worthy is the Lamb. Worthy, worthy. We say, rejoice, O nations, with his people. And the chorus from heaven sounds back. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world. Worthy as he is worthy to take the scrolls. Blessed be he who is worthy to take the scrolls. And then we sing, as the heavens sing with us. They sing, Great and marvelous are your works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, O Lord, for you are the King of saints. And who shall not fear you? Who shall not glorify your name, O Lord? Only you are holy, and all the nations will come and worship before you. For your judgments are made manifest. For your judgments are made manifest. And this will be the song, and heaven will touch earth, and we will see it happen exactly as he proclaimed and as he prophesied it would, and we will be there. Our eternal spirits free of our tabernacles, free of this earthly prison which limits us, which we love so much, until we don't. Until we realize this is what's holding me down. Until we realize all my earthly desires and appetites and theories and concepts and pseudo-intellectual processes, that's what's keeping me from fulfilling the purpose and the plan of God. Well, I want to talk in our last few minutes about the year 5782, which we have just entered into. We are about 11 days, 12 days into the 5782. And so I always try to get some counsel from the Holy One. I really pursue on Yom Kippur, before leading up to Yom Kippur, the whole Elul, and then into the 10 days of awe and Yom Kippur. I really try to spend this time not only taking, Teshuvah, which is a critical factor, but why do we make Teshuvah? It's not just so we say we come back, because he's wants to do something with us when we come back. He wants to give us assignments. He wants to give us briefings. He wants to give us strategy. And so part of that is every year I really pursue, after I get through my flesh issues of Teshuvah, and it takes a while for all of us, I'm sure, of coming back to the Holy One, of leaving the things of the world, the thoughts of the world, the attitudes of my flesh behind, and getting to the place where it is what he wants, only what he wants. When I get to that place, it's like, okay, now what do you want to do for the next year? What the king, we think of years as being the earth as being a perpetual motion machine. It just keeps going and going and going. And you can pick any year, you can pick any time. But the Holy One says, no, I've set it up in times and seasons. I've set it up with seed time and harvest. I've set it up with summer and winter. And I sit above it and I determine whether it goes on or not. I don't let meteorologists or scientists or politicians tell me when it's about to be over. No, I decide every year whether it's going to have another year. Every time of the anniversary of creation, I decide whether it's going to have another year or not. So far, every year, I've always said it would continue. Now, so I sit there and say, okay, so what is it that he wants to do in this next season of seed time and harvest to make sure he keeps it going another year? What does he want us to do? What does he want us to know as his people? What things does he want us to hold on to, hold tight to? And what does he want us to warn us about, which is part of this whole process of what's going on? So one of the things that, and Tony, we talked about this, and I wouldn't say I've taught you to do this, you've just kind of osmoted to do it. So every year, and part of the things Tony has gotten is the whole Ecclesiastes Kohelet. Remember your Creator in the days of your trials, of your crucibles, for the difficult days come. And the other thing is fear God and keep his commandments. Now I want to talk to you about the two latter things. This is the whole of, and in English we say man, but it's not the usual word for man. In English it says, for this is the whole of Adam. This is what Adam was made for. This is what Adam was built for. This is fear God, keep his commandments. That is the purpose of Adam, man, original man on earth. So now we said, fear, what does it mean? And I'm going to ask you also, what does it mean to keep his commandments? So what are you sensing? What are you hearing about what it's going to mean for us in this year to fear God, and then what it was going to mean to keep his commandments?
I think it's going to, I know, based on what I've heard from the Lord, and you're right, that's where he led me is to the Kohelet. I know that it's going to, and we're starting to hear bodies of people starting to go back to this word discipleship, right? We're starting to hear a lot of that in the church, and I think they're on target. because that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like following Yeshua, following his teachings, which he was very clear to give understanding of the Torah, right? Its true meaning and all those things. And so we're going to find ourselves walking really close with Yeshua in these difficult days. What that's going to look like, and I just I put a quote here, and you'll know it because you and our brother in Colorado influenced me to watch this series, right? And so I kind of pull this from the series only because I totally agree, right? But I believe in the difficult days, you're right, it's not just returning. Teshuvah is great and we return, but it's not just, but we live forward after that, right? So we have to live forward. What I see coming back, in a real powerful way is this thought from Matthew 5:13. Yeshua says, "You are the salt of the earth," right? In The Chosen, Dallas Jenkins is the director of this, and he talks about this. But in The Chosen, the character that's playing Yeshua is with the character that's playing Matthew, and they're preparing for his sermon. And as they're preparing for his sermon, he allows Matthew in this scene to critique him. And Matthew is just kind of giving his overview of the things. He says, "Master, these are going to be hard sayings." I mean, it seems like, he says, when I do the math, it seems like you have more hard things, negative things to say than good, and I don't know how the people are going to receive that. And he says, "Well, tell me." So Matthew is going on, and he's critiquing him. And then when they finally get the message right, Matthew says, "Master, what does it mean to be the salt of the earth?" He says, "I'm not good with metaphors." And Yeshua breaks it down this way, and this is what I think is going to look like. The people of his presence is what I'm going to put in the place of what they had the character Yeshua saying. But the first thing he says is, the reason I say that is because, number one, salt preserves meat from corruption. It slows its decay. He says, "Matthew, I want my people," and I call it the people of his presence. He says, "They should be the people who hold back evil of the world." Who hold back the evil of the world. Preserve, hold back I thought that was, because so many times we have a tendency to get involved with the evil that's going on and start getting entangled in the conversations of Raw and all these things, instead of really taking on our assignment to be the salt and holding back the evil. The second thing he says is salt enhances the flavor of things. He says, "I want my people to be the people of his presence," I call them. I want them to renew the world and be part of its redemption, right? I think we spend so much time sometimes as believers looking at how horrible the world is, right? That we forget, as you talked about, in the age to come, not this new age thing that the world talks about, but in the age to come, in his age where he sets up his kingdom, we're going to be a part of this whole renewal process. Now we're part of it now. We're doing some of these things now. I always think about a lesson that you taught us. We was going to Kansas City, Missouri, and you had the boys with you, and I always felt like I was a part of that group. And you would be teaching lessons, and here's one lesson that you taught us. Always leave things better than you found them. Even now, I want to pull your hair out for this. Even now, I'll be in the bathroom at our hospital, and I want to walk out the door, and I can't, because my mentor has taught me to leave things better than they were. So I go back and I'll do a little something, and then I'll walk out. I'm in hotels, all that. Are we leaving the spaces that we inhabit? Are we leaving the spaces that we share with people better than they were before we came? Are we leaving people homes better? Are we leaving conversations better? Are we leaving relationships better than what they were before? So I saw that. And then the last thing he says is, salt can also be mixed with honey and rubbed on the skin for maladies. The people of his presence should be a part of the healing of the world, not its destruction. I think as we fear God and keep his commandments, we're going to find ourselves being the salt and being the light of the world.
I want to kind of build upon that with what the other things that I believe that were the counsel for me, the briefing for me for this year, for us to focus on this year. And, you know, as we realize that we're trying to respond back and for each of us, get our flesh subordinated, get our pseudo-intellect, get our emotions back under the authority and the shade of the Holy One and his ways. As we're doing this, then we are becoming the new Adam, with the second Adam. That is the goal, back to creation, back to the Garden of Eden, back to this process, and then to have a healing, restorative, nourishing effect upon the planet and upon the people and the nations that we contact with. That is a tall order in light of what all is going on, because we want, like you said, we want to get involved with the raw. We want to stand in opposition to the and use their own weapons against them in the language of the moderns. So we actually fight fire with fire. We fight hate with hate. We fight division with division. Well, no. That's not the way this works. That's not the way the kingdom works at all. To the contrary, we do something at a cellular level within us that changes the cellular level of other people. Now, I want to be very careful how I talk about this, because I don't want to use names and I don't want to use titles. I don't want to get in. I don't want to stir up a bunch of flesh stuff, but it is something that's going on right now. Just to imagine, just for purpose of our final part of our discussion, that there is a virus loose in the world. Just imagine. I'm not going to name it. I'm not going to talk about it. It's not about that. But this virus attacks human beings on a cellular level. And what it does is, once it is able to permeate the cell of whatever part of the tissue, or whatever part of the organ, whatever part of the body it enters, it begins to set up home inside that cell and begin to take over that cell and use that cell as a base of operations to send forth its own virus, again, their own virus cells, into other parts of the body. Get in the bloodstream, go through the neural system, the pulmonary system, whatever. Now, I want you to imagine that there is a medicine that's been around for a long time. And it's cheap, and it's easy to get. And that medicine does a lot of things in the world, but one thing it does is it gets into your cellular level, and it begins to form a barrier in your cellular level that will not allow a stronghold to take place of the virus. And therefore, since the stronghold cannot reform in the first cell, it does not spread to the rest of the body. It does not infect and cause illness and disease, and therefore it is a preventative with regard to, I'm not going to go into any further than that, but I'm using the analogy to tell you that's what the kingdom of God is all about. The kingdom of God is about us at a cellular level in us and in the people that we are, because we release the health of that into other people, and they begin to be able to fight off and resist the attacks of the virus. And by the virus, I'm not talking about, you know what. At this stage, what I'm talking about here, I'm talking about the virus of anger, and the virus of lust, and the virus of greed, and the virus of hate, and the virus of division, divisiveness, and overemphasis on ethnicity, and overemphasis on economy, and divisions between vaxxed and unvaxxed, all the division processes. He said, I have ability to put forth something into you, which is the kingdom of heaven, which is the salt, which is the light, to come into your cells, to make your cells strongholds against the virus. But you've got to cooperate with me. Keep that cellular structure. Keep taking the medicine. Keep the medicine going. Dose yourself with this medicine of faith and light. Fear the Lord. Fear the Holy One. Yirah. See him. Keep him in your eyes. Keep him before your eyes. Fear, we think of it in terms of an emotion, No, fear is what you see with your eyes. Yara, it's from the word ra'ah, which means to behold. That's what in Hebrew we think of fear as an emotion we feel or a bad thing. But to us, he said, why do you say fear of the Lord? We shouldn't fear anything if we think what fear is. But you should behold the Lord at all times and respond accordingly as you behold for what you see. That's what your fear of the Lord means. So how do we keep at a cellular level, how do we keep ourselves from being polluted by and then becoming purveyors of the darkness of this world? We keep focusing ourselves upon him and his personality, who he is. Second thing is keep his commandments. Treasure them. Keep it. This word to keep is shamar. And to keep his commandments is not just to obey them. I mean, this is why I think the world gets really caught up in this world obedience. Obedience is a good thing if you obey the right thing. But that's not the solution. The issue is, how much do you prioritize and value this? Shamar means to treasure and cherish, and therefore focus your attention on keeping it as it goes. And so this is Shamar. Keep his mitzvah. He's going to give you briefings. He's going to give you instructions on how to bring life to earth and how to deal with real situations. That's what the mitzvot, commandments are. They're not some way to get to heaven. They're not a pathway of redemption or restoration. They're not a pathway of salvation. That's not what they were doing. They're saying, now that you're in this world and you have this flesh on you, and you're walking around in real time on this earth in the difficult days, you need to have the briefings. You need to have alpha and delta and gamma. I don't mean the variant. I'm talking about the download, the wisdom download, the weather down. What's going to happen? What are the atmospheric conditions, and what do you do with these atmospheric conditions? That's what you need to have. He said, if you have that, incorporate it daily, you will have your cell structure strong that you can resist the adverse negativity of the end. So these are the words that I got in my own spirit in English that go along with fear of the Lord and fear God and keep his commandments. This year, be sober. You know, last week in Parsha, it said that, how will you do these things as if the drunk could be included with the sober? As if you don't understand these two can't coincide. In other words, if the world's drunk with anger, you can't go along. You can't be drinking the same drink. If the world's drunk with fear, you can't be drinking the same drink. If the world's filled with jealousy and envy and racial and class envy and regional differences, if we're all caught up in this stuff, you can't be doing that, because that's the darkness. We're the light. And so be sober. Be sober. Stay with sobriety. Now, I interpret that as what I call alert and oriented times 7. Now, in the medical community, most of you may be familiar with alert and oriented times 4. And basically, do you know who you are? Do you know your name? Do you know what day it is? Do you know what time? Do you know what time it is? Do you know who you are? Do you know what time it is? What time and day it is? Do you know where you are? Do you know what you're in? And then do you know how you got here? Do you know what's going on around you? Those are the 4. Alert and oriented times 4. Now in the kingdom we have 3 more. 3 more levels of alertness. We need to know who we are. We're sons and daughters of the living God. We're the new Adam in process, work in process of being made into the new Adam. We have a neshama in us. We give birth and breathed into us by the creator of the universe himself. That is holy and pure, and trying to take us and teach us in our flesh, disciple us in our flesh. We have that. That's who we are. Do we know when it is? Do we know what time it is? Do we understand the sequence and the times and the seasons? Do we know what parsha we're in? Because the parsha is going to be your briefing. If you don't understand, the parsha of the week will tell you what you need to know for that week. What your rules of engagement with the world are that week. What your rules of engagement with your family members are that week. You will understand what your obstacles are going to be, what your challenge is going to be. So do you know what time it is? Are you oriented times 2? Do you know what time of the Moedim calendar you are? Do you know we're about to head into Sukkot? Do you know where we are? Do you know how we came out of Yom Kippur and what that means? We're making this transition from Yom Kippur. Do you know what season we're in? So the time. Do you know when you are? Do you know where you are? Do you think this is Your little pearl? This is earth is your oyster? Is that how you look into the world at the time around you? This is your city, this is your town, this is your home, this is your castle. No. You live in somebody else's world, his world, the Creator's world. You live in a season, in an ecosystem that he is trying to make fruitful and multiply. It's not about you getting what you want. This is where you are. And then the issue of the fourth issue is, do you know what's going on? I tried to talk to you all day about what's going on. Well, Tony and I have had this conversation about what's going on in the world. Where are we going? Because otherwise you get all caught up with all this other stuff that's on the news and people are arguing about, people getting mad about, people getting offensive about, defensive about. You'll get all caught up in that stuff unless you know where we're going and what's happening, what the Holy One's doing. Well, the Holy One's doing something very good in his people and ultimately in the world through his people. We are going to graduate from the first song that Moshe sang. I will sing unto the Lord. He has triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider thrown into the sea. What happened at the Sea of Reeds? The people did nothing. Stand. Just stand there and watch. Stand and see the Yeshua of Adonai. Stand and see Yeshua of Adonai. Stand and see the salvation of God. And you do nothing. And I will work. That was the first song of Moshe. The second song of Moshe is not that song. The second song of Moshe says, no, now you will team up. We will be co-laborers in the great end-time harvest with the Creator of the universe. First time to get you into this environment, he did all the work. But now he wants you to participate in this process as well. Not so you can earn anything, so you get a chance to rejoice in the end times and the great harvest that comes forth. So first word is be alert and be sober. Now this idea of, that was 4. What's the fifth one? The fifth one is, do you know who your God is? Do you know who your Creator, who Boreka is? Do you know him personally? Do you know Yeshua? Do you know the Messiah? Do you know the personas that you are designed to look like? Because if you don't know who you're supposed to look like, how can you look like them? How can you conform yourself to their image if you don't know what they look like, what they really do? You know why Yeshua, one of the things that we read during the festival of Sukkot, the special readings that we do by tradition for thousands of years, is to read the Cleft of the Rock experience. To read the Cleft of the Rock experience. Why do we do that? Because in that passage, the Creator of the universe told us who he really is. Merciful. Merciful. Slow to anger. Compassionate. Faithful to covenant. Willing to forgive sin, unrighteousness, and rebellion. Faithful to all those who I'm in covenant with, and willing to visit generation after generation to see if the generations that have come have cleansed themselves of their father's sin, of their father's generation's sin. And willing to keep working with you until that happens. Now that's the nature of who you're. We're to emulate that, to become like that. The imitate. So that's number 5. Number 6 is, do you know what your mission is? You know what your part in the drama is? Do you know that you really do have an important part to play? You were designed to be here at this particular time, at this particular season. Do you know what that role is? Can you look at Yeshua enough to watch him, to see what he's done, to realize that you are to be him in your particular sphere of influence? You aren't actually physically him. I don't mean you're take his place. But you will be the representation of him, his ambassador, his diplomat in this world, to do things as he would do them, to speak things as he would speak them, and not to speak on your own will. And then the next thing, the final thing, the 7th thing is, do you know what the end of this all is? Do you know how this ends? Are you have a viewpoint? Do you have a vision? This is orientation times 7, the 7th level of orientation. Do you have a vision for the end game? Can you therefore, by virtue of your vision for the end game of what God really wants to do with bringing one new man back, and making the earth as an Eden again, and having the nations come and worship and celebrate along with us, do you know that being the case, can you overlook stuff right now? Can you see beyond stuff that is going on right now that irritates your flesh, aggravates your mind, activates your pseudo-intellect, and stirs up your innate biases, prejudices, or whatever? Can you get over that for the sake of the vision. And that's alert and orientation 7. So we need to be sober. Are you sober? You know, whenever Paul began to speak in Galatians, we all are familiar with, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. But do you know the verses that precede that? He starts out by saying, do not be drunk. Do not get yourself engaged in the things that other people are engaged in. Do not be drunk with wine, in which is excess. You're going to go off on way different tangents. You're going to be all over the place. If you don't understand that part, you understand what it means to be filled with the fruit of the Spirit. Be filled with the Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God is, or the fruit is this. So this idea of sobriety. We are called to a heightened level of sobriety this year. A very, very high level of sobriety because of the next thing that's going to happen. The next thing is be vigilant. Be vigilant. Now, most people don't use the word vigilant in a common sentence. Vigil. To stand vigil is like to stand guard. You're given a certain area that you're supposed to patrol, and you are given that responsibility to be a watchman in that particular area, and they're counting on you. All the rest of the community, whether it be an army, whether it be a civilian population, whether it be a fellowship, whether it be your family, whether it be your wife, your husband, they're counting on you to be in your position, to be watchful over that's being vigilant. So this being watchful, we're at a post. We're given an assigned post, and we must be at our post. We can't take the time off. Go AWOL. Say, no, I don't want to do that today. I want to be upset about stuff today. I want to throw a fit today. I want to be envious of the rich. I hate that word. I mean, people are people. Forget calling these stupid labels. They got their problems. We got our problems. What's the deal? Life is, we're sitting there thinking to let people divide us by these class or silly labels. Well, we could call a bunch of other labels, but none of them matter. We're one new man, and we're all in this kingdom together. So be on post. And are we on task? Are we doing what we were assigned to do? You can be on post and be watching your phone, watching the videos on YouTube. But are you on post doing your assigned job? Do you know what the briefing of the day is? Do you know what the protocols of the day are? Every post, every time you're assigned to a post, you're given certain instructions. And those instructions are your job. Those is what you're supposed to be doing. And they're counting on you to do those specific things. And if you don't do those specific things, somebody's going to suffer. So are you on post? Are you on task? And are you in accordance with the times? Next thing is, the word I hear is persevere. This is a word that is not preached. It's not talked about. Most people don't want to hear it. It's like long-suffering. Nobody wants to talk about these phrases. It is one of the fruit of the Spirit, long-suffering is. So here, persevere. To pop yourself on the forehead or get somebody to pop you on the forehead and hope it all just clears up and goes away is not the process in this day, in the difficult days. In the difficult days, we will be required to persevere, to keep doing what we're doing, even when we're tired, even when we're hurt, even whenever we want to get all up at, give me some R&R, just give me some time off, give me a vacation, it's our job to stay on post, at task, on time. So to persevere. Now this is why last week we learned one of the main phrases, the main themes of last week's parsha was hazak va'amatz. In English, be strong. Be bold and be strong. I talked to you about that last week, about what that means, but let God strengthen you. You need the medicine that strengthens you at the cellular level, building up yourself in your own most holy man, inner man. That is what happens. And so do you know that? One of the things I meant to mention in regard to the 7, alert and order times 7, do you know where your strength comes from? Do you know where the energy to accomplish these things come from? It's the things that the Holy One says are holy. What the Creator of the universe says is holy, that's where you go, and in those holy things, there you find the energy and the strength to carry on. That's your food, your nourishment. What's holy? The seventh-day Sabbath is the first thing that is holy. The Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, is holy. The Holy Torah, the Holy Bible, is holy. the holy festivals, Moed, Yom Kippur, the holiest day of all. All these things. These are the holy things, and these holy things give you the energy and the empowerment to be able to at a cellular level, to fight off the attraction, the virus of the world that wants to get to you. The next thing is that in this atmosphere or environment that we started this whole conversation off with, the enveloping ecosystem atmosphere of the heavenly kingdom. Hold on to your shalom. Value it. Your peace is more valuable than being able to get in an argument with somebody over something. Being right. Your peace and the peace of your environment is much more invaluable than being right about an issue. Being on the right side of politics, on the right side of medicine, or the right side of philosophy. It's more important to be at shalom. Hold your shalom. If you don't hold your shalom, then the world is not getting the light, and they're not getting the salt. Hold on to your joy. I mean, these are things that we should all know. But you have to endeavor. You have to strive. You have to persevere to hold on to your joy. The world is always giving you a reason not to have joy, not to let your joy, and to be angry, to be offended, to be sad, to be depressed, to be worried, to be anxious. The world gives you 1,000 reasons a day to do that. Our job is to hold on to this joy that is of the Spirit, that is of the eternal. Next thing is hold on to your emunah. Your emunah is called faith in English, and we've gotten whole doctrines and theologies over this issue of faith. I don't have time to talk about stuff like that. What I do have time to talk about is what faith is. Emunah. Emunah is from the word aman, which what happens when a mother takes a baby to her breast and the baby begins to suck. And the mother produces milk in the breast. Aman. So, it's not about what you believe in your head. It's about whether you're producing milk to nurture. And what baby are you nurturing? You're nurturing the growing, maturing Yeshua in this world. This is what you are. So hold on to the milk. Hold on to your ability to nurture and nourish. Don't give it up for anything. Don't quit nurturing. Don't quit doing it, because it'll dry up. It'll all dry up. Okay. So hold on to your emunah, your simcha, and your shalom. And then I'm going to, love not your lives, even unto death. We are seeing a lot of death. We have just been touched this week. A dear brother has found that vanishing point. Now, he's good. He's God. He's fine. He's better than fine. He's one happy fellow. He's okay. We, on the other hand, have to deal with the fact that, wow, I really liked him. And we really need him. We think we need him in this process. Now, so this issue of death, but here's the situation. Most of us would do anything to keep from dying. Most of us struggle so hard and fight so hard against dying until a certain stage and a certain point is reached. A certain point is reached at which we say, what's before me is better than what's behind me. I can't make you get to that place, but I can tell you, you need to be looking for it. These are difficult days. And yes, many of us will die. Let's get real. Let's quit using charismatic nonsense to try to tell us we're all going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. We're going to die. Most of us are going to die. So how we die and whether it glorifies the creator of the universe is the question. And whether, when time comes, we release this body joyfully, and the people around us can rejoice with us that we've released this body joyfully, no matter what the circumstances and the situations are. No matter how we think it's evil. It shouldn't have happened that way. It should never happen that way. Sometimes it looks worse than others, but it should never happen that way as we in the earth see it. But here's the deal. Do you love your lives, or do you not love your lives? Would you rather have death than living in a situation where you're not reflecting the glory of God? No. Love your lives not unto death. Love not your lives even unto death. Prepare to die. If you can't prepare to die, you can't really live. Now, these are hard words. This is a hard time. This is not, oh, everything's going to be great. You're going to have a vision in 2020. This is that kind of prophecy. This is a prophecy that says if you ain't ready for this, you know, the thing about the Hebrew warfare is, first thing is, anybody don't want to go? Anybody scared? Go back home. It'll happen to you, whatever happens to you, but if you want to be in this, if you're in this with us, come on. And this is where it says, hold on, don't love your lives unto death. And the final thing is, overcome by syncing, synchronizing, connecting the word of your testimony with the blood of the Lamb. Now, I don't want to get all mystical about blood. I always, whenever people start talking about the blood and they don't explain what they're talking about, they don't deal with it, I get frustrated with it because it's like you're turning people away from you because they don't know what you're talking about. They don't understand what you're talking about. People, we just throw that word around like it's some kind of magic talisman. It's not. The blood means the life force of Yeshua. His life force, the life of the creatures in the blood. This is not about you covered with some kind of sticky substance that turns you red. This is not that. This is about you actually are subsumed within the character and nature of who he is. Enveloped in his persona. So yes, we're going to keep your testimony consistent with it, bring them into sync, bring them into coordination, synchronization of the word of the testimony with the blood of Yeshua. Now, all that being said, in the book of Revelation, another set of the songs, when we get finished here, the set of the songs is, it says, well, did I just lose my train of thought? Okay, hold on. It says that in 3 places it says that these are those who will overcome. Those who have the word of the testimony of Yeshua and something else. And the commandments of God. The unity, the synchronization, these two must take place. If you try to do it with just the commandments of God, you're going to get all caught up in your theory and your intellect. If you do it just with Yeshua, without the words, you have no real purpose. You have no real direction. You have no real substance. You've got a piece of paper with no instructions as to what to write on it. But if you put together the testimony of Yeshua with the word of the testimony of the commandments of the God, now you have an overcoming faith, an overcoming possibility. That's our season. That's our situation for the next year, 5782. Tony, we ran over a little bit of time, but I want you to have a chance to say everything you want to say.
Well, I think you've said it all. This is good stuff today. That's why I like being here. I will encourage our body and the families. We knew we were going to be dealing with a lot of trauma. The narrative, the narcissistic narrative of our day, are going to create traumatic victims. We are called of God to, as we said, be the salt, people of his presence. We are learning. Moses is the example, right? And I like this parsha because it lays out his whole life basically. But Moses didn't start with the words that we see here in our parsha. Moses' first response to God was, "Who am I? Who am I to go and bring these people out?" And he starts talking about his inability to do things or whatever. And we start that way. We don't really see ourselves the way we're going to be later. God sees the whole story, and he's written the narrative that he wants our focus on. He wants our focus on the narrative that he's written. And he unveils parts of that narrative as we go. We grow into the revelation of more of the narrative. We can read it all day, but we grow into the revelation of it. And where we are right now is we are those who have been given the tongue of the learned. Because we have to speak a word in season to those who are weary. People are coming out of this traumatized. I work in healthcare. And every meeting, we have groups of people, leaders that are fatigued, people walking out of the door, people tired of the lines, and they're frustrated and they're exhausted because wave after wave, right? And sometimes they allow us to say things on the call to try to encourage our brothers. And I feel really good about that because I do have an encouraging word. I do understand what they're dealing with because I'm in healthcare and I'm dealing with it too. But I do have I do feel like I have the tongue of the learned. And it's because I think he wakes me up morning by morning. And I think he gives that to me, right? Every morning I awaken to new mercies. I understand that. I'm really in a place where I'm sensing the love of God. But I believe that God is calling us now and drawing us to himself because he has to put in us and he has to breathe into us that awakening that keeps us present for people. We can't disappear, right? I hear people talking about the rapture. I don't want to argue that. But we can't disappear. We need to be present for people. And one way that we're present for people is we need to know what Yeshua is saying. We need to know what he's saying. And this is why you and I talk about this at the beginning of every year, is because we like to hear what he's saying to the two of us, and then we share it with others. But we're not the only ones hearing from God. We are not. Others are hearing from God, and it's purposeful. It's strategic. I remember you talking about sitting in that room with the Lord, and he's going over all of this strategic high-level stuff. And you're there, and he looks at you, right? What an amazing picture that is, because that's really the way it is. We get to be a part of this end time strategy. We're here in difficult times, perilous times are here, and we're going to be successful in it. But success doesn't look like what the world described it as, right? We don't let this Torah leave us. And because we don't, he says you'll make your own way prosperous and you'll have good success. And that's not the way the world defines it. Those are not the words, and that's English, but it's not the words that even the world uses. But this is where we're going. This is the success of the saints. We suffer, but it's better than that, right? There's a bigger picture. There's a true narrative playing out. And we get to be a part of it. And his mercy has allowed us to be a part. So that's, I think my main thing today is that what he said to me was really clear and simple. He says, fear God and keep his commandments, right? And you explained it. And I felt like that was the message that I was supposed to enter into 5782 with.
All right, it's time to break up this part of the meeting out here and to say goodbye to our dear friends who are in the world, across the different nations. Blessings. Thank you for coming. Let us know you were here and put your place of residence, not necessarily your house or your address, but at least your city or your village that you live in the country. And please let us know you're here. Let us know if we can pray for you. Let us know if we can answer any questions you might have. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. We'll try. We'll definitely try. We'll look at your comments. I want to conclude today with this message to you out of Psalm 1. Of all the things that we've said today, all the things you've heard today, it's sort of summed up in Psalm 1. So I'm going to recite that psalm for you, again in English. Blessed is the man who walks not according to the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the Torah of the Holy One. And in his Torah he meditates day and night, and he will be like a tree planted by the rivers of living water, which brings forth its fruit in its season. His leaf even will not wither. And whatever he does will prosper. The wicked are not so. They're like chaff that the wind drives away. But the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation assembly of the righteous. but the eye of the Holy One is upon the righteous, while the way of the wicked will perish. That's our message. We choose which one we want to be. Where do you want to fall? You've been called to the righteous side of this equation. We'll talk about it in the Feast of Sukkot next year in Jerusalem. May there be a blessing upon your house. Joy, celebration, simcha, chag sameach unto you till we see you again.